Hey YouTube, I'm Mr. Terry, a high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Reacts video. All right, if you didn't know, I am also really into gaming, and I get asked all the time about, hey, Mr. Terry, have you played this game? Have you played this game? And of course, a lot of those recommendations are history-based games. And some of them I played, and some of them I haven't played. And one of the things people always ask me about is this game historically accurate? Right? And if you come over to my gaming channel and you've seen me, I like to talk about those kind of things. But in this video today, we're going to be checking out the top 10 most historically accurate video games. We're going to check this out, and I'll let you know if I've played it and what I think. And if it's a games I haven't played, I want to know from you, is it worth playing? All right, again, if you have not come over to my gaming community, it's a lot of fun too. If you go to Mr. Terry Gaming, there's also going to be a link down below. You can see me do live streams and other gaming content. And again, if you like what I'm doing here too, sub over here, and I hope to see more of you. And with that, let's get started.
Some games are loved for their historical accuracy.
Sure.
Yes, no game is completely 100% perfect, but many games take characters, themes, elements, vehicles, or other details to make a game feel in line with history.
Now, I'm going to tell you right away that I don't think historically based games need historically accurate to be good. In fact, if you did things in gaming that were purely historically accurate, there probably wouldn't be that many fun games. Right? Because gaming, to me, you want to be empowered. And there's so many situations in real life, if you've made a game on it, it wouldn't be like that at all. So, yeah.
So today we're talking about 10 games with historical accuracy. This is a broad list of varying degrees of accuracy. Bottom line, a game with a good eye for real history can be great for history buffs and awesome for people looking to learn a few things. Let's dive in and get started off with number 10, which is LA Noire. This is a great one.
I want to play this. I have not.
Detective working for the LAPD in 1947 Los Angeles. Most notably, this game made use of a new motion scan technology, which is used for motion capture and captures multiple angles of an actor's facial expressions, which plays a key part in the gameplay.
Now, I've seen this game streamed a bit, and it's kind of interesting because you're like a detective. But like, as far as it being accurate, I mean, is it just for the setting or because like they're real cases? This is a game I've wanted to play though.
As a detective, you're going to be questioning and interrogating witnesses and subjects, and you have to read their facial expressions to try and figure out whether or not they're lying or telling the truth.
That's cool,
which is where that new mocap tech comes in. The expressions are super detailed and makes questioning almost puzzle-like, seeing that you're interpreting their facial expressions more than what they're actually saying. Some of it is actually so realistic that it's actually kind of funny, but that's not where the historical accuracy comes in. But more on the dev team's take on 1947 Los Angeles. They did a pretty great job with it, actually, not just catching the feeling of the times, but they also tossed in a lot of real-life landmarks that you can find in-game, like the Bradbury Building, LA Public Library, Chinatown, LA Union Station, the Egyptian Theater, and many more.
That's what I like about a lot of games. Not necessarily like the gameplay is something that's like supposed to be historically accurate, but the settings. I love real life settings. My favorite thing probably about historical games is feeling like you're there at a place and time. That's what I really love.
This is one of my favorite parts of games like this, seeing what places I can recognize, and the dev team here did a great job. Moving on to number 9, we have the Brothers in Arms series. When you're making a World War II shooter, you want to make sure there is some historical accuracy. You know, seeing that it's about a major moment in history. And Brothers in Arms gets it right, from weapons to locations. Gearbox Software really did their homework for this one. For weapons, they really studied them to get them looking right, and even shot some to get an accurate feel for them. They also interviewed veterans, researched soldiers who actually fought, and studied the architecture of the places you go in the game to really try and like get it right and dial it in.
So, okay, so they're definitely taking the stance of gameplay, not necessarily being accurate thing, but more like the settings. And something like this, any kind of shooter, of course, is not going to be accurate. Guns are way, way, way harder to shoot than in a video game. And they're loud, again, and they're hard to use. And games never capture that. But again, that's where I was saying games wouldn't be very fun if the mechanics of it were really, really accurate. So games like this, I'm glad that they didn't just say, oh, it's this first person shooter and guns don't shoot. They have more recoil and there's unlimited ammo and all that. Like, I feel like that's a pointless to bring up when you talk about historically accurate. And It's not going to be fun. How can it be fun?
During the development period for the first game, they actually worked with a retired U.S. Army colonel to help develop the gameplay and make sure that it was accurately tactical. IGN actually posted an article a few years back where they went and visited some of the real-world locations that are in the first 2 games and took photos of them to compare them to the in-game versions, and they're pretty spot on.
That's cool.
I read on a message board somewhere that people were joking about if you play the game enough and really familiarize yourself with the map, that you could travel to where that map is in real life and give a tour of it or whatever.
That would
now,
be cool.
I don't know about all of that, but I'm sure there will definitely be things that you recognize if those structures are still around today. Next up, we have Eelsturmovik 1946. This one is a hardcore flight sim.
Wait, what?
One that your dad would definitely play.
What is this called?
The interiors of the planes are designed so meticulously, it's the closest thing you're going to get to sitting in the real thing without actually sitting in the real thing. There's over 200 campaign missions for you to take on, ranging from historically accurate to alternate history stuff, but here it's really the planes themselves that are historically accurate.
I love planes and flight and stuff and things like that. And in another life, I think I'd love to get a pilot's license or something like that. But I haven't necessarily played a lot of the simulators. I have Microsoft Flight Sim and things like that. I have the new one about torch my PC because it's so dang powerful, and I can catch up to that. But I'd love to have the yoke and all that, and that would be fun. But I've not played anything like a historical flight sim. Something like that would be appealing to me, but I've not played this. If you've played this, Stumikov 1946. Let me know down in the comments if this is fun.
Not just in looks, but also how they fly, going as far to make the effects of G-force a thing. You can actually black out in certain flying positions and situations, and the developers have implemented pilot sickness features as well. Now, I'm not into planes at all, but that attention to detail is awesome. If you're looking for the World War II flight sim, there really isn't anything better. It's gotten a ton of support over the years with different expansions, and it's definitely worth your time if you're into this kind of thing.
Graphical enhancements too.
Next up, at number 7, we have the Oregon Trail. Y'all remember this game? I remember playing this in school for educational purposes, not for fun, but then liking it so much that I played it for fun. Yeah, there are a ton of versions of this game at this point, and it's kind of hard to keep track of them all, so we're just kind of talking about, Oregon Trail.
Dude, you're a 90s kid if you were just freaking out with excitement when it was time to go down to the computer lab in elementary school and you booted up Oregon Trail. All right? Real 90s kids know exactly what I'm talking about. It didn't matter if it's the crappy DOS black and green one or this one or whatever. You were playing video games in school and they were tricking you to learning in school. It was genius.
In general. I mean, this game was designed to teach students about the stuff that people went through when making their journey on the Oregon Trail.
And it's nearly impossible.
It didn't need to be this big flashy thing either. The game is rather simplistic, but it really does a great job at doing what it's meant to do. I mean, anytime I have a stomach ache, all I can think of now is that my tombstone is going to say, "You have died of dysentery." So it worked. I get it. I understand how hard it was, and it's something that I haven't forgotten, even coming up on 30 years old. Oh man, I don't want to talk about that. But anyway, yeah, juggling supplies, taking care of the people you're traveling with, literally everything that could go wrong, going wrong. It kind of set me up for life in general, honestly. Life was that difficult back then, and this game was one of the best ways to get that idea across to young students. It wasn't just open prairies and horseback riding. No, that's not what it was. So yeah, if you want to see
the hunting was supposed to be the closest thing to what you played as a kid. You get to shoot stuff, and it was so bad it sucked. You had to hunt, otherwise if you didn't bring enough food, your whole crew was gonna die, so you'd have to hunt and shooting the bears and stuff. It was so dang difficult. This game is extremely hard, as were all games back in those days, because replayability was about something being hard. You do it over and over and over again. I feel like back in the 80s or 90s, with gaming, they felt since games couldn't be large in size with their files, there's not necessarily a lot of content in it. So it's they feared that if you finish the game, because if you were really, really good at a game, you could blow through it probably in half an hour, and then you never want to play it again, and so be it. So they just made games really hard, where today you can make games easier because you have more content because of bigger data files. So games like this, you think about for kids, it was really difficult to win this game.
how much of a struggle it was for a mid 1800s pioneer to travel the Oregon Trail, this game still holds up, dude. At number 6, we have Total War Attila. This game takes place during the late Antiquity era, which is what...
This is something I get recommended to me a lot, okay? And it's mostly because some of these games, like Hoi 4 or something like that, where it takes so long to learn, and I feel like I have the time, patience, but I appreciate it, and actually like watching people that are really good in these games. And Total War, I've heard, isn't quite to that extent of having to learn so many of them. But this is something I not played, but been all of the Total War games. Something I know I should probably check out.
You know, they pick call the time a transition from classical Rome to the Middle Ages. This game does a great job at showing the changes going on in Rome during this time, politically, culturally, environmentally. There were some pretty drastic changes that were happening. Like, it shows how climate change was affecting many civilizations, with you actually seeing the Huns migrate into Eastern Europe. Then, of course, you get the Total War gameplay when you're controlling these massive armies as you run through Rome. I don't know, I think this is a very specific historical scenario to cover in a video game, and I think the dev team deserves some praise for this one for sure. Moving on to number 5, we have the Assassin's Creed series. This is kind of a weird one because, I mean...
All right, I love Assassin's Creed. I played all of them. I play them all on stream. I love the games. Yes, I know they're not always historically accurate, but I love the settings. That's my favorite thing about Assassin's Creed. Even more than the mechanics of it, right? But I love Assassin's Creed. Yeah, I know it's fun to clown on and stuff, but I love them. I do.
I mean, like, look at Assassin's Creed 3. You're gonna tell me that an assassin rode around with Paul Revere warning the colonial militia that the British were coming? Obviously not.
But again, it makes it more fun.
More as a set piece than anything else, but Ubisoft does a great job at giving you enough historical accuracy, mostly in the way of using historical figures like George Washington and Leonardo da Vinci, and the settings of the game. That's one thing that they really get right. The best part of Assassin's Creed Unity was running around French Revolution era Paris and seeing all of the real-life landmarks, and the same can be said about Assassin's Creed 3 and getting to run around Boston and getting to take part in the Boston Tea Party. I would say that it's safer to view these games as more of alternate history. Like, we can't prove or disprove that there was a big crazy war between the Order of the Knights Templar and an Assassin's Brotherhood. Yeah. The same way that we can't really prove or disprove that Abraham Lincoln may or may not have been a vampire hunter. I know these are two drastically different examples,
I've been teaching my kids that
silly,
for years.
But I think you get the point I'm trying to make.
By the way, if you want to get a far more detailed breakdown of what I like, or which Assassin's Creed games I like, go over to my channel, my gaming channel, Mr. Terry Gaming. Look for a video. I tiered listed all the Assassin's Creed games. You'll see which ones I put top tier, which ones I didn't like, because there are ones that I didn't like very much.
To some, history is fun, learning about the past, what shaped the world into what it is today, and I think that Assassin's Creed approaches history in that way. They make it fun. It's cool to be playing an Assassin's Creed game and seeing a landmark or a historical figure or an event go down, and you go, oh, hey, I learned about that in school. And seeing that we weren't there and record keeping wasn't the same as it is today, there leaves a good bit of wiggle room and a lot of stuff in between the lines that we really can't confirm, and that's where Assassin's Creed can really do its thing. It operates in between the lines, in that gray area. Then they also do stuff like the Discovery Tour mode that we got in Assassin's Creed Origins, where it's pretty much an educational virtual museum.
I've tried to think of a way, and I've always kind of like thought I should do it, but enough kids I don't think would like it. But if I had some really devout kids to history and stuff like that in my classroom, I would love to use the Discovery Tours, just like in my class, and just like rather than me lecturing, being like, hey, let's go through this Discovery Tour, right? Like we're talking about Greece. Let's go walk through Athens. I would love to do that. I don't know if it would catch on with a lot of kids per se. They'd probably be like, why are we doing this? And not even pay attention. But nevertheless, it's something I've thought of that I would love to integrate into my classroom.
And honestly, I hope that's something that we keep on getting. At number 4, we have Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is kind of
I've played this as well.
One of the big selling points of this game was its historical accuracy and realism. There are definitely some realism elements to it, like sleeping and eating to stay healthy and repairing weapons, clothing, and armor that will degrade with time. Then we have its historical accuracy, and yeah, like most games, some stuff is exceptionally accurate and some stuff isn't. Warhorse Studios focuses mainly on weaponry, architecture, war, and politics, which they did get right. Warhorse actually consulted and worked with a few historians to make sure that they did get it right.
So this game, I started it probably 3 different times, and at the same points of the game, I stopping. And it's too bad because it was actually a gameplay thing, right? I love the setting. The story was great. It's just so different, right? You can tell it's not just this traditional Western based kind of. But the combat, I know it's a much more detailed, melee combat game, and it's a lot more complex. And just call me a boomer about it or something. But I just didn't have fun with the combat, and it turned me off, unfortunately. But the problem is, I liked everything else about the game. Really, really do. So it has nothing to do with that. It was just, the combat was not for me.
So you'll see real castles and other architecture recreated in game. Weapons and clothing were also recreated with historical accuracy in mind, with weapons actually being wielded the same way they would have been back in 1403 Bohemia. It's not all perfect, of course, but it's really interesting and makes the effort totally worth it. The hardcore might find faults, and they're definitely there, but for most people, it seems like they're happy with what they got, which is fine. Like I said, the weaponry and architecture is great, And
when I see this stuff, it makes me want to go back again.
And clothing and armor that people would have been using back then. Also, how cool are swords? Next up, we have Paradox Interactive's massive grand strategy hit, Crusader Kings 2. It's important to note that the game tackles a very old...
Now, these are especially the games where I am like completely overwhelmed when I try, and I've tried to play these EU4, Hearts of Iron 4, haven't done Crusader Knights, but it's that same thing where it's like, it's so overwhelming to me. The time that it would take me to commit to learning these games is just so vast that I don't have anymore. But I absolutely appreciate for what it is and think they're awesome. If that makes sense. It's like, I don't want to play them, but I believe they're awesome. A game I feel like that right now is Elden Ring. Elden Ring looks amazing. I love watching it and stuff like that, but it's like that the difficulty and stuff would turn me off. I feel like I would dislike the game more if I played it than if I didn't play it. And I feel like these games are like that. Grand strategy, Paradox.
Kingdoms and empires that can't be detailed with 100% accuracy because they're just so old, but Crusader Kings tries its hardest while also staying fun. And man, they did a good job. It acts as a simulation, a model representation of history that tries its best, and it drops you into play with all of it. Kingdoms, rulers, many dates, and how land and feudal relationships often go down are all represented here. Things change because you're playing in the game, of course, so you should not take the game as like a history lesson to use it to finish your schoolwork or anything. But
hey, I've had people that are like, I passed my AP Euro test because of EU4, stuff like that, and like some of them feel like they legitimately got help on some test questions and stuff and higher level history classes because of that. That's true. More power to you.
Get a lot here. If you appreciate feudalism and history, you'll enjoy biting into Crusader Kings 2 for sure.
Cool.
And number 2, we have Verdun. Sorry, I'm not French, so we're just gonna move on. This is a really cool one because it's actually a World War I first-person shooter, which I still don't think we have enough of, honestly.
Okay, here's always been my thing. Is about like people are like, we need more World War I games, and I'm like, okay, if you do, you better make sure you don't care about historical act. For the fact that, okay, you want to fight on the Western Front. All right, do you want your character just to sit in a trench and do nothing for long periods of time? And then it loses all of its like arcadey type feel to it. And then when I, saw that they did Battlefield 1, Battlefield 1 was doing World War I. I'm like, that's cool, but that did not feel like World War I at all. It was all like, you're actually going to be using a prototype weapon of a type of, handheld mobile machine gun that wouldn't have existed. You're using it as a prototype. It was more about like bringing in like modern shooting mechanics and stuff, but in like an older setting, and it just didn't feel, of course, like World War I. So that's always been my thing. But I have heard that Verdun is a game that somehow, I guess, still makes it fun. But again, it's hard for me to believe that they couldn't just change the nature drastically of how this war actually was.
Historical accuracy is something that this game uses to market the game, saying that, you know, it's a realistic World War I experience with close quarters combat where a bayonet matters just as much as a gun, and even has maps that are based on real life World War I battlefields.
That's cool.
They also put a lot of love and care and detail into their weapons.
But again, are you just sitting in a trench?
Not only do they look accurate, but
like they
fire accurately too, with realistic bullet drop. Artillery strikes and gas attacks are a thing here as well, and your gas mask becomes a super important part of the gameplay, and they try to really show the horror of this stuff with some pretty serious gore, man. The dev team did their research and worked with historians to make sure they got all of this right, as well as uniforms, which have been meticulously recreated down to the smallest details. They really tried to capture the dark and grim atmosphere of World War I, and they did an amazing job with it. Finally, at number 1, we have Combat Mission, which is a PC game series that aims to recreate tactical real-world battles and have you play through them in hybrid turn-based gameplay. The series handles everything from the combat to having spotters and managing line of sight to casualties and soldiers' affected morale, motivation, and fitness. What started as a game focused around World War II battles eventually expanded with multiple games, a new engine, and more war scenarios. Of course, it's not, you know, all 100% accurate, but Combat Mission goes to great lengths. Mortar and weapon range is highly realistic. UAVs are modeled after real-world ones in use by the US, and tanks dating back to World War II not only look highly accurate, but have the same movement speed and handling capabilities. Cannon range, the speed of turret movement, and even the angle of penetration on armor plating is all considered here. All dropped in battles that actually took place from the European theater to Afghanistan in the 80s to theoretical conflicts involving NATO, Syria, and more.
Afghan war.
The uniforms the soldiers wear, the actual availability of different units, and what type of manpower can be used and where is all researched to accurately reflect that battle you're in. The game may look straightforward, but there's a lot of painstaking history and attention to detail under the hood. And those are 10 games with historical accuracy, but we want to hear from you, so meet us down in the comments and let us know what you think.
Let's talk about it, because I want some feedback from you. All right, so what did you think of this list? Okay, have you played these games? Would you mix it around? Do you think they missed something here in this top 10? I'm trying to think of some other things. Again, they put up a lot of big ones. I was assuming, I'm just looking at my games and stuff, you know, I have, but there are a lot of things that they had up there. Of course, we didn't see any Call of Duty games because, you know, you're doing the older World War II ones. You know, I don't know if they feel like that as much. By the way, we need a World at War remaster. Okay, if anyone here is watching that is in any way affiliated with that, let's get that one. You're remastering everything else. We need a World at War remaster. Anyway, so I was telling you a little bit about kind of my feelings about playing some of those grand strategy games, so you probably saw that. But nevertheless, I appreciate a lot of these games. And I really do appreciate when the companies do try to make something accurate. Because the thing is, too, though, like, you want your game to be very accessible. And there's a lot of people that, again, aren't going to put a lot of respect necessarily for trying to be historically accurate in games. I mean, if you're somebody following my channel, you're probably somebody that, again, probably a really big interest in history. So you'll notice those things. But it's like, it seems like the easier route, again, would be to ignore some of those features of trying to get the right, you know, feel of these weapons and the scenery and all that kind of stuff, and focus more just on addictive gameplay elements. You know what I mean? So I appreciate when these companies do that, and companies that can actually combine the realistic settings and stuff like that and fun, engaging gameplay that doesn't take you out of some kind of version. I think that's really, really impressive. I love that. So if somebody loves history and loves games, I'm going to continue doing that, and I know there's still a lot of stuff I need to play out there. If you have suggestions, you can put them down in the comments. Also, come over to our Discord server. Almost everyone in there is into gaming. We have game channels, and people play basically all these games. Some of these multiplayer games, people will organize games and community things, and it's a lot of fun. But anyway, link to that is also down below. But again, what would you change on this list? That would be great to know. All right. Hopefully I see you again over at my gaming channel. Link is down below, Mr. Terry Gaming. If you liked what you saw here, hit that sub button. And with that, again, and we'll see you next time.